Mighty Mo.
We nominated the judge, but he refused.
Well, we've been in contact with bond counsel, and he just this evening sent me a draft ordinance to look at and to play with and tweak and get some information in. But I suppose that we've talked about how much we want to levy and then how much we want to sunset, and so I suppose that we could give you some suggestions, and I think we have a half cent tax and sunset a quarter, but ultimately I think it's your choice and your decision to make. So I think that's something that would generate discussion around the court as to what we want this ordinance to have in it as far as the levy, and then the amount that we want to try to sell bonds for. I mean, how many dollars or how many millions of dollars of bonds we want to sell. And I was thinking up here, this just wrenches my guts to think that we're talking in millions of dollars, and we throw it around like it's just going to Walmart and spending $100 for groceries, and we talk about millions. It just I don't I don't like it. But I know it's the nature of the beast, and that we have to have a jail, or we'll have anarchy and so all that. But anyway, I've just started digesting this ordinance, so I don't have a lot of information to share with you, except that we'd like to get some guidance on what direction to go.
Do you know when you'll have something to kind of present to us as a starting point on that bond issue?
Well, obviously, he just sent it to me this afternoon, and then I'll need to look at it and get it over to County Attorney Lester and make sure he looks at it and sees that it kind of fits what he thinks it should say. We're using Shep Russell from the Friday Eldridge and Clark law firm, and he's been doing public finance stuff since 1978. So, I mean, this is his area of expertise. So we felt comfortable that he's going to have it written correctly, and that there won't be any issues on down the road the way it's written. We just need to know what numbers to plug in.
Do you have did he give you any numbers that you can share with us tonight?
Well, he just wrote it up on the half cent and then sunset quarter cent. The architect thought about $30 million to do the expansion we talked about, but then there was discussion on the court about, well, how much that was for the 600 bed expansion. There was talk about, well, do we want to go 600? How big do we want to go? What do we want to do? So, I think that's our suggestion, is that we go 600, and that's their projection about 15 years out. And I think it's going to be hard to forecast much further than that on what we're going to do in this region. We know it's growing, and we know it's growing at a phenomenal rate, but I don't know, you start trying to forecast too much further than that, it may get into just the swag method.
Okay. Any questions? I know this is a little generic, but do we have any questions? J.P. Ecke.
Thank you. The Russell Hill, I guess, method of doing business, he always gets 3 bids.
Right.
Did we get any other bids from other architects on what would it cost to build?
No, we haven't yet. We're just in the preliminary stages.
Because I mean, what I'm thinking is, if we had a clear picture, they might all come out the same. But if they don't, then how much of a bond do we really need?
Right.
And so that's where I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think on our bond we have to kind of come up with a not to exceed this much, and then we start getting bids and finding out what the actual dollars are. But we kind of just say, that's what I've noticed with Fayetteville and Springdale and Rogers when they've done theirs. They do their bond that says not to exceed this much money, and so much for this part of it, so much for this part of it. Because they're doing multi projects, Fayetteville and Springdale and Rogers. Mm-hmm. But so Mr. Russell says, Shep Russell down at the Friday firm, that we probably need to talk with a bond underwriter, and he'll tell us what it'll cost to market those bonds, and so that if we want to pay it back in this amount of time, then we can theoretically borrow or sell bonds for this much, or this many dollars worth of bonds. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah. But yeah, we will get some competitive bids once we kind of get down, ready to start doing some actual construction.
I think if I remember right, Bobby Hill told us that a half cent would generate around $20 million of revenue a year. So we're
Right,
looking at
yeah.
about a year and a half before that half cent sales tax would sunset to a quarter as
Right.
been proposed. So
Right.
construction could maybe be paid for in a year and a half's time of that half cent levy. Is that
Right.
correct?
Yes, yeah.
JP Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I read in the paper recently that the state was looking at doing a similar expansion, but their numbers came in at like 35 million, 300, much larger than our projections. Instead of 30 million, like 35 million, 38 million or whatever, I don't remember what. But I just wondered why their numbers might be coming in that much higher than our numbers. And of course, always concerned about overrun.
Right, for a state prison, they're talking about 35 million for a state prison, or, I didn't follow you, what was the state gonna?
They were talking about expansion possibilities, and their projection for the same size expansions I understood was $5 to $8 million more than what we were projecting.
Ooh.
And I wondered why the differential there and the possibility that we're underestimating real cost.
Yeah, I don't know, unless it has to do with maybe land acquisition. We've got the land, so we don't have to, one thing, acquire any land. We're talking about 100 of those 600 being the minimum security, which we can build at, substantially less money, and then 500 beds of the hardened beds, and then 100 minimum security. So that's part of it. So yeah, but I don't know what the differential is. The information we got was from our architect, and they've built these jails all over Arkansas and Tennessee and southern Missouri. So they've got a lot of knowledge about building jails, which is building a jail is kind of unique, and it's like a hospital. They're a little different than building an office building or a lot of other things. So they've got a lot of experience, and they've got a pretty good feel for what it costs to put one of these together.
Okay, my second consideration was that it seems to me that since minimum security capacity costs about a third of what the hard capacity costs, that we might look at doubling that minimum security space to take some pressure off the hard space. And I don't know what that would do to the numbers, but I think it's always good to have second opinions about proposals, not just take a set of specs and say this is what we're going to do, but hear from other people that build jails and hear their proposals about how they might recommend handling this thing.
Okay.
So I don't know if y'all have already reached out to some of those people or what the prospects are. I know we typically ask for bids on anything like that.
Right.
And all we've heard about so far is just one
Right.
potential contractor.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of ways we can do it. I think we can do bids for a contractor, or we can do a construction manager situation where we request for proposals on who will do us the best job, and then the county judge, and I suppose with the help of the county attorney and the sheriff and whoever he picks, we'll pick the one that they think will do the best job for the county, and then that construction manager puts everything out for bids and gets the lowest prices and the best deal. But we hire the construction manager on a kind of a contingency fee based on what the cost of the building is. So they kind of work on a percentage.
I would sure like to see some proposals about the concept of increasing this minimum security space compared to the hard space.
Okay,
Thank you.
sure.
Any other questions along that?
Yeah, we hope to have something for you to look at hard and fast at the December 20th meeting, is what our goal is, to have this ordinance fleshed out enough that the court could look at it and then start digesting it and seeing how they want to proceed with it.
Do you anticipate any major changes from those kind of top-end half-cent sales tax, quarter-cent sunset, et cetera, that process from what he gave you today?
No, I think that unless somebody's got a different idea, that's how we did the last one, and it worked well. So I think unless somebody's got a different idea or a better idea, that's what we'll stick with. And obviously, when we start discussing it, then we can modify those numbers, amend them in the ordinance as we go through the process of approving it.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Then next we have an overview from the sheriff on the 287G program. I know many of you probably received emails today regarding this from a couple of folks, so we just wanted to, it was very timely since today's our meeting, just to have a discussion around that, so I wanted to make an opportunity for Sheriff Elder.
An overview of the program or an overview of that email?
However you want to respond, I think you were in on those emails, so if there's anything in that we need to know just to bring us up to speed on what you do, how you handle it, and why, then just an opportunity to do that.
Right. So I just got the email when you all did, and probably after. I've been in staff meetings all afternoon, so I've tried to come up to speed before the meeting, anticipating that somebody might have a question. What was that? Drop your gun out of your purse, Eva?
That's my smoking gun.
So, anyway, an arrest was made for a sexual assault on a person back in August by Fayetteville Police Department. First of all, no, I can't go into great detail. There's a juvenile involved in this whole process, so I can't really go into great detail, but our victim was young. Let's just say that. And then at some point, after 4 months or so, my understanding is the person of interest had a hold placed on him by immigration. And during the time that she was in jail, she got married. And I can't even get into that. But at any rate, at some point, the victim declined to testify or prosecute. So on December, I may get my dates wrong, but December 5th, perhaps, Judge Lindsay dismissed those charges, or the prosecutor's office did. There was an order at any rate. We were unaware that the charges had been dropped, null pros, basically, on this person until December 7th. And we were notified then by the defendant's attorney that this had occurred. And it was at the 11 and a half hour of the 48-hour hold requirements. So in absence of the order, then our people in the jail started scrambling around trying to verify that this person had been authorized by the court to be released. And then when they were able to finally do that, then they released her. But in the meantime, we had a 287G person in. They made contact with immigration to say, look, this person is being released, and we're under order from a circuit judge to release her. You need to know that. And so we released her, and then the immigration guy came. When she got out the parking lot, they arrested her and put her back in jail on their charge, which I don't know how much I'm able to go into what their charges are, but I think this person was originally here on a student visa and then never got upgraded their work visa like 4 years ago. So their hold is not based on the aggravated assault or sexual assault charge. It's based on their charge of violation of whatever rule that is in the immigration books on the visa expiration and non-application for the upgrade. The email I got was much more salacious than that, but that's the nuts and bolts of it. We were not aware of the initial court order, and when we put into process getting her released. That's what I know at this point. That's what I learned in the last half hour. I was out of state when all this occurred.
Any questions? Yes, JPA.
There was the part of the email that we got that I didn't understand, like the ICE agent was waiting outside, like he couldn't go inside.
I don't know the reason for that, to be honest with you. I just know that our deputy that's cross-trained notified him that she was being released, and he made a determination. But I don't know why,
Cause it almost, the way, I mean, it made it sound like it was almost intentional that he was told to wait outside.
I don't think we would tell him to do that. I think he made that decision on his own, and I don't know if that's based, I don't know if I really don't know, because he could certainly have arrested her in our facility, in the lobby or wherever. And, but
Okay, well,
honestly, I don't know.
Cause I
either.
think the information is purportedly coming from him, so I don't know.
Yeah,
Saying that he couldn't come in.
it's a public facility, so I don't know,
Okay.
honestly. I haven't talked to him. I don't know. Sorry about that.
Chippy Balls.
I know you've been beat up in the community about this, so, and I've never had a conversation with you. Why do we participate in 287G, since we're one of the only two counties in the state that do it?
So, we've been, it takes a little bit of history to get to the point to where I answer that question, but 11 years ago, I became sheriff in '05. And then, you know, back during that time, you know, immigration was definitely a hot button issue throughout our communities. But the majority of the hot button was coming from the people that were very angry about the immigration issue, that why aren't we doing something on the enforcement end of things? And so about 2010, no, I guess it would have been at 7 or 8. I think I was in my second term. We became aware of the 287G program. And in my mind, having been on Fayetteville Police Department, where we would get called in the middle of the night or one of these covert deals to go do a workplace enforcement thing where we would assist immigration, go in to a poultry plant or somewhere and then just pounce on them and everybody's scurrying around. I just never really did like that involvement. I don't know. I wasn't ever comfortable with that. And it appeared to me that with the 287G program, partnering with, cross-training with immigration, in particular the detention model, I felt like it was the best of all worlds for the community and for law enforcement. I would be sitting at a table and making decisions instead of just being called in the dark of night saying, come help us do this. The reason, I'm gonna back up just a moment. There were I think there were three options at the time that we could participate in partnership with 287G. That was to become part of a task force program to where we had investigators that would partner with immigration, identify, you know, felons, people that were doing a lot of different things, whether it's drugs or human trafficking, a lot of things. We could participate in that kind of a program. We could participate in cross-training for our patrol deputies to basically become, in absence of immigration officers on the street. And then the third part of that was the detention model. We chose to do the task force model and the detention model. I wanted to stay as far away from the cross-training of our deputies to help perform that function because of racial profiling. I just felt like it was really going to open the door to a problem that we just didn't need to bite off. And we chose not to do that. And sure enough, it wasn't a year. Some of our neighboring police departments chose to do that, and it wasn't long. They were shut down, and it was a bad deal. I mean, we could predict that from the beginning. I think during President Obama's tenure, obviously the 287G program came under fire. And one of the first to fall after the patrol law enforcement on the street program bit the dust, then the task force model was defunded, which I thought was a mistake. I thought it was a great program from an investigatory standpoint. But the one that stood the test of time was our detention model. And here, I said all that to tell you this, that it to me, from an executive law enforcement officer and representing our community from a law enforcement perspective, it just seems to me that it serves overall purposes, in that if you want to dumb it all the way down, and that's how I think a lot of times, Daniel, is just that if we have somebody that has broken a law serious enough to be put in jail, all right? And that could be a variety of things. It could run the gamut from murder to public intox. But instead of us picking and choosing who those people are that we're going to check, to me, it really simplified it in that we could have some people that were actually trained within our facility, that once folks were identified as potentially being in our country illegally after having been arrested for a state violation, okay, then that process begins. And this is the way it looks, a snapshot of it. We have a questionnaire, if you will, during bookend, that all 13,000 people that are booked into the sheriff's office jail detention center are asked the same questions. Nobody is pulled out and asked different questions. Everybody is asked the same set of questions. Well, within those questions, there are certain questions that are asked about that will flag on country of birth and things of that nature. If those questions are answered in a manner that would send up a red flag, then our internal deputies that are cross-trained in immigration will pull that file, they will review it and make a determination, okay, I'm going to move forward with this and talk to that person and try and determine to the best of my ability, are they here legally? Have we missed something? Are they here legally? Then after that, and a lot of them are, they wash them out right on the front end. Because a very small percentage, I will tell you, of those that come through are actually identified and flagged for detainers. Once our deputy makes a determination that to the best of their ability they've determined that they are probably here illegally, they pick up the phone or communicate with immigration and say, I believe that we have a person that's probably in our country illegally. They're in our jail. It's yours. Here's the information. Then immigration will then pick it up and make a determination whether to put a hold on. We don't put a hold on people. I said all that to say that, to me, the detention model should satisfy the majority of people, in that it's only coming in contact with people that have broken the law that has caused them to be in jail. You know, and that's oversimplification, but we do task force with the FBI, Immigration, U.S. Marshal Service, DEA, but this is the one, obviously, that catches the most grief, but it never has until we had a change in administration. And from our perspective, we've changed nothing. We've done the same job for over 10 years, and I think done it very well.
I'll catch you up later. We're not gonna debate this, me and you, here in front of everybody, because I just wanted you to be able to answer it in public, that question, because I get asked a lot. I know some of us others get asked a lot, and so I wanted to hear it from you. But some of the other questions I have, I'll talk to you in private about them. But
Sure.
thank you so much for answering.
You're welcome.
Good answer. Thank you.
You're welcome.
JP Madison.
So what is the change for the administration? Is it that status violations are being held?
Well, I think that the way it began was before Trump ever took over. It was the rhetoric leading up to the election, in that, this is my opinion now that I'm going to give you, is that leading up to the election, I think people became very afraid when it started looking like he was probably going to be elected. And I think segments of our community that had seen significant gains felt like they were going to go significantly backwards, whether that's immigration or it's the LGBTQ group or whomever. You pick the group, but the ones that felt like they had made significant strides, I think, believed that they were going to go way backwards. Okay, and then, so an example of this, Eva, is we have a steering committee meetings annually. We've never had anybody come to these things. We put it out. We beg people to come. Oh, I know. And well, then once the change was in, all of a sudden we've got a room full of people that are anticipating that the sheriff's office is gonna do all these horrible things. Well, we've never done them. We're not gonna do horrible things under my watch. We're gonna continue doing business just as we've always done it. So, that may not have answered your question to your satisfaction, but that's strictly my opinion, that I just think human rights activists really are afraid of where this administration is taking, what their stance is.
But I mean, the stories you hear, I mean, are about, you know, a minister at a local church talked about one of the members of his congregation who entered the country legally. I mean, came in on proper papers, but they get expired. And I've helped a pro bono client who came here on papers, and you know, life goes on and you just forget that you've got to renew something and you've got to go get an attorney to do it. And if I hadn't helped her through it, it would have been hard for her. And so this individual had something lapse, but it wasn't like he was not a productive member of society. His family was here. Well, he's been in Gina for over a year now, and his visa has been renewed, but because he doesn't physically have it in his possession, he's stuck there. And in the meantime, his family is out without anybody to, you know, help them with finances, anything. And it's just, you know, I mean, I understand that everyone that's put on an ICE hold is arrested for something initially. I get that. But they're not all offenses that you should be permanently detained. And so I understand that you can say that we've participated in 287G for a long time, but the way 287G is being applied by the feds is different today. And I think we should have some investment in making a decision on whether that's the right decision for Washington County today. Because you hear stories about families being broken up. And that's what we hear. And that's, you know, you're telling a different side of the story we heard today, but the story today, you know, sounds like we called ICE so that they could go pick up some woman who thought she was being released so we could arrest her in the parking lot. And now she can't make bonds, so she's being shipped to Gina. So, I mean, there's certainly an emotional component of it. And these are not people that entered the country illegally in many instances. They're here on some kind of, they're still here on some kind of status issue. And I think we have a duty in our hearts to look at those people differently and say, you came in the right way, you did it the right way. It's just the system is hard with renewals and things. So I just feel like, you know, my constituents talk to me about this a lot.
Sure.
And you and I have talked about it a lot. And so I don't think we can just say 287G is the same. It's not today as it was. It's not, because of what ICE is holding people for. And I think we should look harder at that. So I know that's your decision, and I tell everybody the quorum court doesn't have the power to do this. And then they tell me to defund the jail, and I say, well, that's not really going to happen. I'm not defunding the jail. First of all, I can't do it alone. And second of all, I wouldn't put the people that work there or that stay there in harm's way in that respect. So, well, you have an exciting meeting ahead of you tomorrow, because I think I've gotten 12 invitations to the 287G meeting tomorrow. So I will be here at our committee meetings. So have fun.
Deputy Bowman.
Is that a threat? Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank Mr. Balls for asking that question. Your answer is the best explanation I've ever heard of that program. So I appreciate it. I better understand now than I did before. I guess the other question I've got is I read in the paper that the current administration in Washington is talking about getting something through Congress to help modify the I don't know how, I guess how we enforce drug laws or all kinds of things. I don't know a lot about what they're proposing, but it sounds like the proposal is aimed toward some of these nominal offenses not going to jail. Do you have any background on what they're talking about, what they're proposing?
Are you talking about federal or
Federal.
state?
But from what I understood, this is going to be something he's going to be asking to be applied nationwide.
There are continual conversations about our drug laws that they need to be revamped. I mean, I've sat on two different commissions, two different governors about prison reform, and one of the main topics is our drug offenses, and are we handling those appropriately? Are we discriminating against people because they're selling one drug and not another. And then when you look at now, when we're talking about changing sentencing guidelines, for instance, and we've got somebody that's been in jail for, and we're basically on the path to decriminalization of marijuana. I mean, whether you admit it or not, that's in the sights. And we've got, because of certain laws, that if you had a certain weight or you had distributed that drug a number of times, well, then you're sentenced to like 75 years in jail for selling marijuana. Well, in 5 years, if it's decriminalized, what do you do with that person? So I think a lot of that discussion is based on the sentencing rules that were, like the 3 strikes you're out, and where we really over-sentenced people because we were mad at them. I think that will probably all come into the conversation as to what do we do with these people that were probably sentenced to too long a terms based on where our country is now and their philosophy as it comes to drugs and all that kind of stuff. So Harvey, I'm not aware specifically of those conversations, but I think it's an ongoing conversation that's not necessarily new, unless the Trump administration has something really out of the box.
Well, I guess my perspective on the situation is it looks like that in a situation like that, if something is done substantially, it might reduce jail population on the front side. But long term, it seems to me that legalization of another addictive drug like that is going to lead to more long-term, bigger problems.
Yeah. Remember this conversation that I try to have with you guys often, and it is that even though our jail is full, and it's my belief that drugs are the root cause of the majority of the people in there, they're not necessarily drug charges, okay? It may be a burglary, it may be some other offense, but the drugs caused it. So I don't know what percentage that would affect as far as drug charges not filling up our jail. We're still going to have people in there because they cannot function in society.
That was my point.
They just can't. But anyway.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Any other business? We're all ready to go home.
Don't forget to give Jeannie money.
Yep. Public comments. All right. Motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
There's only 4 of us left. Somebody better make a motion.
It's not something that's working on your time, you've got to dedicate to that. That's a requirement.